Okay, today I'll just read to you this article, and then this afternoon we're going to go out to the Kui Gangkai, the Kui boulder field, which is of interest to us because, one, it's the last publicly reported sighting of the Hibagon, the Japanese Bigfoot. Was it the last? One of the last. And that was the two-witness sighting of the Hibagon on the cliff edge, stomping his feet, going ho, ho, and holding a stone axe in his hand. So a rather memorable sighting, full of information. And two, it's interesting to us because a man disappeared there. And his is one of the cases on the National Police Agency list of mysteriously vanished persons, on which Hiroshima Prefecture is so heavily overrepresented. So that should be the next video after this one, I imagine. Now, Coiled Serpent Mountain interests me because that is the place where the peasant, many, many years ago, the peasant was found killed, disemboweled, with his stomach contents scattered around him. Buckwheat soba noodles, his last meal. And that looks to me like it could have been a Hibagon attack. In fact, Hibagon would be my number one suspect. I can't think of anything else that would have done it. So we missed finding the memorial stone that we know is there. We'll try to find it next time. We did find, as predicted, lots of structures in the woods. No, those were Hibagon structures, some of them, and human structures in two categories: Japanese, old Japanese castles, and pre-Japanese megaliths. We found the famous frog stone. We found that dome back in the woods that, who knows, we might have discovered. And this beauty with fabrication marks still on it, and many more. So we want to go back there. You can hardly throw a rock without hitting something interesting. And then I found this story. Janzan. That's the name of the mountain in Japanese. I'm going to translate it Coiled Serpent Mountain. Coiled Serpent Mountain is located in the northern part of Ekiyamachi, Fukuyama City, Hiroshima Prefecture, and is the second highest peak in Fukuyama City. However, it is a small mountain with an altitude of only 545 meters. I have to interrupt just to say that the writer is speaking in terms of Japanese standards. If you imported this mountain to Ontario, exported it from here, imported it to Ontario, it would be the second or third highest mountain in all of Ontario. So it would be a very large Appalachian or Laurentian mountain. It is not in the leagues of the Rockies, the Alps, the Himalayas. Continuing. This area is now a small rural town, but it seems that it used to be a relay station on the Chugoku Road from around the 5th or 6th century, and the name Ekiya itself is said to be a remnant of the station building of the ancient Ekiden system. Ekiden would have been a relay postal system, something like a Pony Express without the ponies. It seems that there was also a beacon tower on the summit of the mountain, which was used as a relay system to announce incidents in the Kyushu region. At the top of the mountain now there is a shrine dedicated to the Yatsushiro Ryo, and because the mountain looks like a giant snake coiling around it, it used to be called Dragon Lord Mountain. That name should be familiar to all of you because that's the name of one of the peaks on Mount Hiba. As you can see from the name, the mountain is associated with snakes, and there are large snakes in local folklore. Eyewitness accounts of giant snakes are published in Jianzan Fudoki, 1974, by Mr. Goro Yoshioka, who was a local elementary school teacher and a member of the Ekiya Town Cultural Property Protection Committee. The document begins with folk tales about the serpent, and in addition to the tales that the author heard in his childhood, tales that he heard directly from eyewitnesses of the serpent are recorded. I have to get a copy of this. I'm going to try to do that. The last eyewitness account is that on July 7th, 1969. A farmer named Hiroshi Mishima saw a large snake. It was raining heavily that day, and Mr. Mishima was worried about his rice field in the mountain. So after lunch, he carried a basket full of farming tools, such as hoes and sickles, and entered the mountain path. There was something that looked like a big log across the road, across the trail. When I approached it, suspiciously, the thing like a log was moving. It was the body of a large snake. Even the scales, the size of a 10-yen coin, were clearly discernible. In the basket there was a hoe with a blade of about 30 centimeters long, so I put it next to the body and compared it. It was only about 3 centimeters smaller in diameter than the hoe. In other words, it is a huge snake with a body of about 27 centimeters in diameter. The head was already in the grass, so the total length is unknown, but the part that passed in front of Mr. Mishima was 5 or 6 meters. Although I was terrified, I adjusted the amount of water in the rice field, mowed a little grass to feed my cattle, but I was so scared that I immediately went home. Mrs. Mishima, who met him at home, noticed that her husband's complexion was not normal. When she heard from her husband that he had seen a serpent, she remembered that there was a rice field belonging to her acquaintance in the direction that the serpent had been crawling. She immediately informed her acquaintance of this by telephone, which the telephone had arrived in town by that time. Phew. And told her not to go to her rice field, as it was too dangerous. The next day, when Mrs. Mishima and her neighbors went out to the site, they found a dent in the ground that looked like a snake had crawled on it, and a line of grass left in the direction the snake had headed. But the story doesn't end there. When Mishima's grandmother heard the story, she confessed that, well, she had seen a giant serpent herself. According to my grandmother, she once saw a large snake coiled up while working in a nearby field. The stout grandmother then said to it, "This is not the place for you. Please leave. Go back to where people can't see you." As she shooed it away, the serpent departed quietly back into the mountain. Mr. Yoshioka, author of John Zanfudoki, heard Mr. Mishima's eyewitness account directly and said that he did not seem to be lying or confused at all. It is certain that no one involved is the type of person who tries to attract attention by telling strange stories, and the witnesses can only be considered true. On the other hand, there is also the question of whether it is possible for such a large snake to have survived until recently on a small mountain where many people come and go. Even after examining fossil specimens, there is no evidence that snakes larger than the Aodaisho once lived in Japan. If so, it is possible that this serpent somehow slipped into our world from an alternative biosphere, where the common sense of normal biology does not apply. Given the fact that large snakes have been sighted on Coiled Serpent Mountain many times, this mountain may have a gate to another world. The end of that article by Ray Honey, or Honey Ray. Well, what should we say? I believe the eyewitnesses. There are other reports, lots of other reports of giant snakes in this area, and I don't think everyone is lying or deceived. And I myself have seen something like a giant serpent in the sea, a sea serpent. I saw it, so yes, I believe it. Now, personally, I don't think interdimensional portals are required. The valleys on that very mountain are huge and dark and deep. They're practically bottomless because you can't see the bottoms or even reach the bottoms unless you fall in. There's plenty of space on this mountain, plenty of food in wild pigs. And the wild pigs are also enthusiastic scavengers of deceased organisms, whether great or small. And the climate and the soil here and the terrain and just everything does not favor bone preservation or fossilization. I would not expect to find the bones of any animal on this mountain. The pigs would find them and crunch them up and eat them before I would. Also, we were there on a holiday with perfect weather, but there were very, very few people on the mountain. I think we saw, half a dozen people all day. Now, everyone except me sticks to the road. Nobody goes off-road except me. There were lots of abandoned houses and wild fields. You contrast with 50 years ago, at that time there were more people living and working here. Farmers and residents do go into the woods for resources, so there would have been more opportunities for encounters. I will try to find another grown-up to go exploring with me. That megalith trail continues past that dome stone, I think. And look, somebody put that stick there. That stick did not fall. If that stick had fallen there, it would have bounced right off. Somebody put it there. But this is all invisible from the road. I sniffed it out and pushed my way 50 meters in there to be able to find it and see it, but nobody else does this. And outside of winter, I wouldn't be able to. And that old castle road. We have Castle Ruin and Hibagon overlap now on Mount Zhao, Castle Mountain in Jinseki-Sanwa, and Bingo Akasaka. Castles are built for privacy and basically livability, at least survivability. And they have materials like stones for tools, weapons. Shelters might be ready-made. So we'll go back. And we have to find that memorial to the disemboweled peasant. I know the general area, but we just ran out of time. It was beginning to get dark. Running out of time as now. All right, thank you. I love you. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you are ready to open your Team Hibagon Christmas present from Santa Claus? All right, and we'll finish with this sketch of the late, great Oliver Reed, moments before Shelley Winters dumps a drink on his head on the Johnny Carson show. Art by, of course, your very own camera girl.